Hi, my name is Cameron Burns. Welcome to the Watermark Water Cooler. I'm here with Kenan. He's going to introduce himself, tell us a little bit about himself and what he does for Watermark. So Kenan, I'll give you the floor. Tell us who you are.
Alrighty. My name is Kenan Smith. I'm from Denver, born and raised. I've been with Watermark for about a year and a half doing web development. Been loving every minute of it. Made all sorts of really cool sites so far, pages, all sorts of stuff. And lately we've been diving much more into analytics and A/B testing, which is why we're here today.
Yeah. And so it's funny because like A/B testing has been around for a while and we've moved into Contentful. There's some like really cool stuff that we can do inside of Contentful. One of the reasons why we made that move. And I know you're going to get into some of that, but I also kind of want to just talk a little bit about Watermark's process and why we think A/B testing is such an important piece. You know, we believe in a full cycle strategy for web development and, you know, strategizing, designing, development, and to close the wheel, kind of that measurement side of things. And A/B testing is a perfect piece of that. So Kenan, you know, what's the deal with A/B testing? Obviously it's been around for a while, but you know, what are we doing and what have you been up to?
Yeah, so I guess to start out with, I'd have to address the fact that most people still think of websites as just a static thing. You build your website, you put it out there, and then people use it, and that's kind of the end of the story. But the reality is something that we try really hard to explain to people because it's incredibly important. If you spend the time, put in the money to creating a website, once it's done, that's basically your initial best guess at what is an effective website. And at Watermark, you know, we made a lot of websites. We have really good designers, really good content creators. So when we make a site or when we make a page, it is a very effective page. It's a very effective site, but you can never get the most out of your website unless you're constantly testing it. So you can make a really nice site that, you know, advertises your product nicely, has a nice guide to get people to buying something or using your services, but there are always going to be hangups that you just can't see coming until you test them. So that's where
Yeah.
A/B testing comes in.
And so just to interject there, Kenan, on what you're talking about, you know, something that I'm always saying to people when we're talking to people about web design and web development is that a website isn't a billboard, right? It's not something that you just put up there, people drive right by, and that's the end of it. It's done. It's so much more than that because we have the ability to, you know, billboard is, you slap it up there, it's done. Web is so much more organic. You can change on the fly.
Exactly.
Particularly if you have a good back end that allows you to manage that. So
Yeah,
keep
exactly.
going.
Websites are that's one of the biggest advantages that people just don't take advantage of, is that you can very easily make adjustments on your website, and any small adjustment can make a huge difference just because of the way human psychology works. If our brains see a certain color, we react differently to that versus another color. If we see a giant block of text versus a list, one of those is more appealing than another. And these are things that you can implement everywhere in your site. There are little bits of psychology that's going on in your user's mind that where they see something and they react to it a certain way. And there's no one on the planet, the world's leading psychological web development expert, doesn't know exactly how people react to a certain page. So the only way to maximize the amount of people that you are really engaging with, that you're getting sales from, the only way to really maximize that, and not even just maximize, just get more out of it, it's, you know, the base website is, if you do it really well, like we do, we take a lot of time to plan it, design it. If you do it really well, I'd say that the perfect first version of a website really only gets you maybe 75% of the way there. And from there, you have to do testing, continually make changes. if you really want to get the most out of your website. Otherwise, you're just leaving customers and conversions on the table.
Something I almost forgot to say at the very beginning of this. Sorry. We're talking about A/B testing. I've got 2 envelopes. So watch the whole video, subscribe for us, and we're going to give these away. And Kennan's going to be our A/B test selection committee here of which envelope is what. And whatever he opens, we'll give that away in the chat below. So sorry, Ken, I just want to make sure I got that in before we got too far into this.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, something you mentioned there that I think is really important about A/B testing is that small adjustment. Like, we can't have these huge changes because nobody's going to know what's going on, like what worked.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that we've done with A/B testing that's small increment? Like, give us some examples of that.
Well, one important thing to know about A/B testing is you can test anything, whether it's content or the appearance of the page, and we've done some of all of that. We have tested the number of form fields on a form and how that affects how many people fill out the form. We've tested how the form behaves, whether there's a form on the page to begin with, or once the person clicks a piece of content, then the form shows up. We've tested that. You can test the overall appearance of the page. You know, you can change a background image. You can change the color of a font. You can change any small thing does make a difference with how people use your website. So it's worth testing any little thing. And that's one of the big advantages of A/B testing, is that you don't have to spend a ton of time. You can literally set up an A/B test in 10 minutes and get very useful results out of it.
10 minutes if you're using a good CRM.
Yep. Yep.
Or CMS, sorry. Yeah, if your CMS is not set up to do this,
Yeah.
you have to do a lot more groundwork at the very beginning to get that you know, in there. You know, WordPress has some options for it, and I'm sure Joomla does too. But again, plugging Contentful, it's built into the process of how it's made, so it's super simple to test it.
Yep.
But I think the key still is just this one change per A/B test. It can't be, I'm changing the color of this button and I'm changing the call to action language inside of that. Like, you can't do both. You got to pick one or the other. And do it in small increments.
Yeah, and really you could do a lot all at once, and there is a time and place for that. If you really aren't sure at all where you need to start improving, you can make very broad changes overall. And if that broad change version ends up performing better, then you can just kind of use that as if it's like a new starting version, and then start refining with changing one thing at a time, so you know exactly. But yeah, to your point, it is important to, typically you only want to change one factor at a time, because if you change a bunch of stuff and the performance goes up or down, you're not sure exactly what changes specifically are causing that. Whereas if you only change one specific thing, you know that that was the reason for improved or decreased performance. So it's important to isolate one variable at a time, unless you really just aren't sure if anything's really working at all, or just want to try something radically different. That's also valid. So A/B testing is very flexible. You can do pretty much any test, no matter how big or small, and as long as you get enough people using the page, you will get meaningful results that you can use to improve.
Okay, so you just said something really important that I was going to bring up, and it's a good segue, is the number of people using the page. Like, I remember several times I've heard in the past, like, hey, you don't want to do A/B testing if you have a small volume of people on a page, because you're just not going to get the data you need. What are your thoughts on that?
It is somewhat true, because basically the The only requirement you really need to get meaningful information from A/B testing is enough people viewing the page. However, even if you don't have huge monthly traffic, all that that means is that you need to let the test run a bit longer to end up getting uh, enough viewers to see those results. So if you're someone like Facebook who gets, billions of views a day, you can run an A/B test for probably a couple hours and get the results you need. Whereas if you only have maybe 10 visitors to your site the entire year, you can still do A/B testing, and you still should, because it's so easy to set up and get started. You're just going to have to wait maybe a few months before you have enough data to really make a conclusion on whether the change was effective or not. So even if you
Ooh,
don't have
10,
much
10
traffic
would
at
be
all,
rough.
10 would be rough.
10 a
10
year.
would be rough. That's a bit of an extreme example, but
Yeah. We'd
it
all be,
just goes to show.
it's 50-50.
Yeah, that would be maybe a couple of years A/B testing if you only had 10 a month, but just the
Yeah.
point is, even if you don't have much traffic, it's still worthwhile to do it. You'll just have to wait a little bit longer for the results.
And can you give us some examples of some data that we've done A/B testing for and what's worked?
Yeah, definitely. So one really basic one that we had started with was just simply cutting a form from, I believe it had 4 or 5 form fields down to just 2 fields, just the very basics
Mm-hmm.
of what we needed to know from the person to get in contact with them. And that was pretty obvious. That was more just a run through to get A/B testing going. And obviously the form that had less fields, people were more likely to fill it out. But it's still useful to have the data to back that up versus just having it on a hunch. So that's another important note. Even if you know that something is going to help your performance, you should A/B test it anyway, just to be sure, because you never know. There are weird off cases where something that seems obvious is actually the opposite, and you'll never know until you test. So that was basically kind of an intro A/B test we did. And then from there, we started getting into much more meaningful stuff. With that same form, we are now testing whether it's more effective to have the form on the page already, or if someone clicks a piece of content, then the form pops up. So that's one that's ongoing right now. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see how that affects user behavior, if people are more likely to fill out a form that they see right away, or if they're more likely to fill out a form once they've committed to clicking on a piece of content and then they're prompted with the form. And then one more important one I wanted to mention was there was one landing page we had where we tested the appearance of the page mainly. We changed the background a bit. We cleared, there was an overlay on the background to kind of darken it and make the text stand out. We got rid of the overlay so that the very nice high-res background image was showing as clear as possible, and then kind of changed the font size for some things, and just general kind of updating the appearance of the page. And this one was really interesting because while the page looked a little bit more modern in the separate version, it ended up not making any difference as far as conversions went. So you might think that that's wasted time because you didn't get any change in performance, but that's still very valuable info, because that tells us that the people who are looking for that particular content didn't really care too much about the presentation. They just wanted the content. So whether it was a super nice modern page or something that looked like it was off of the 90s internet, they still would have filled out the information anyway, because they were just interested in the content and they weren't the type of user to be put off by the appearance of a page. So even though the results came back not showing that either one performed the other, we still got really valuable information on it that we can then use in the future.
Yeah, I know that this is a little bit outside of your genre, but we also do this with social ads all the time with our clients. So it's 3 different ad sets, and all of them may have the same image and the text is changing, or and then we'll let that run, and then we'll test to say, okay, this one performed better. Was it the image or was it the text? And then we do one where the text is the same, but the image is different. And then the image is this, whatever. We mix it up just to try and eliminate what made somebody interested in that ad and made them click on it. So it doesn't have to only be in web. A/B testing can be done for, your social ads.
And even billboards,
really,
like you mentioned earlier, as like a counterpoint. Billboards are a static thing, but I think if someone really wanted to get the most out of their money, they would do a small run of maybe 2 different billboards. Whichever one got them more business from that area, you then take that version and iterate on that. So even something like a billboard could be A/B tested. It's really important because you can never know how people are going to react or use something until they've used it and you've tested it against other versions. So anything you're putting out there, you should consider, is it possible to A/B test it? And if it is, then you should strongly consider doing it.
Okay, Kenan, is there anything else here we're forgetting that we need to talk about?
I just wanted to mention that just in case you're not convinced on A/B testing from our testimony, if it doesn't sound, if the fact that it's easy and effective isn't quite convince you, you should know that pretty much every major company that has an online presence, which is pretty much every major company, is heavily using A/B testing. The biggest examples would be people like Amazon or Facebook. The reason, a huge part of why they have continued success is because they don't treat their websites like it's working well enough, so why change it? They throw that philosophy of if it's not broken, don't fix it out the window, because in this day and age, the internet is constantly changing. The way people use it is constantly changing. So, and people like Amazon, Facebook know this better than anybody. They are running hundreds of A/B tests all the time, all over their site, to make sure that they can maximize every little interaction. Even though they get billions of visits to their sites, they still see the value in making sure that every single person who visits sees the site in a way that is most effective for them to get what they want out of the person, to get the behavior they want. So, things like for Facebook specifically, social media platforms come and go. Most of the major ones now are simply pieces of Facebook that were taken and turned into another platform. But Facebook is still alive and around. They're not going to fail like MySpace did, specifically because they are constantly A/B testing their site and making sure that the way they set it up creates the most engagement with their users. So even if the fact that A/B testing is easy, even if the fact that it's effective, if that's not enough for you, all the major companies are doing it for a good reason. So you should really consider it if you haven't already.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, we're down to it, Kenan.
Oh, fun
envelope time. A or envelope B. So for again, just as a reminder, subscribe to our channel. Catch the next vlog. We're going to continue talking about marketing trends, agency life. So if you have anything you would like to see, like to hear about, post a comment, let us know. We'll try and film a video on that. So here it is, Kenan. What is the lucky person going to get? Envelope B or A?
I'm going to have to go with B.
Envelope
Let's
B.
see what we got.
Okay, we're opening it up. Let's see what this is. All right. This one was a free A/B testing consultation. So we'll be more than happy to get Kenan on the phone with you, with myself or one of our account team, and just do a free consultation. Talk about how we can implement A/B testing on your site. So the other one was, let's just open it up just to see what this one was. This one was a free landing page with A/B testing put in, and we would build it on Contentful for you. So there it is. Thanks so much, Kenan. It's bitterly cold here in Colorado, like -2 degrees. So there's not a lot you can do outside, but have a great rest of the day, Kenan.
Hey, you too.
All right. Bye.
See ya.
Don't hang up yet.